Welcome to the Style Free Podcast, where a father and son detail and digress on the wide variety of topics within music, art, family, and culture. Your hosts are Professor Stephen J. Tyson, Sr. and Jr., also known as Dad and Papa. Today's episode, we dive into the Isley brothers and Earth, Wind & Fire, ahead of their upcoming Versus battle hosted by Triller. So I know we got the Isley brothers versus Earth, Wind & Fire Versus coming up.
Yeah, that's really
Sunday.
Exciting. I love that, veterans in the game are getting attention. And it's also shining a light on not only their contributions, but also their continuing impact in music and the culture, even to this day.
Yeah, definitely.
But those particular groups are really iconic, and they're different. They're not, even though they came out of, let's take a moment here because the Isley brothers had their first hit, in 1959.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and
they were teenagers.
Right.
They were teenagers. Okay.
Yeah.
So whereas Maurice White, I guess first big break was with Ramsey Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
In the 60s, but he was gigging around with a lot of guys. Maurice originally comes out of Memphis. The Isley brothers originally come out of Cincinnati.
Oh, I thought Maurice came from Chicago. I didn't know he came from Memphis.
He was born in Memphis, Tennessee.
Wow. He
was raised by his grandmother. His mother moved out from Memphis at one point and married a guy named Verdine. Yeah, Verdine Adams. So Verdine at some point changed his name to White to align with his brother, I guess. But he's essentially a junior, but he's Verdine, and so he's the product of Verdine, who was I believe he was a medical doctor or a dentist or something like that, and Maurice's father was someone else. That's why they're brothers, but they have different fathers.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Anyway, then at a certain point, Maurice is hanging out with some of his buddies like Booker T Jones, Booker T and the MGs, right?
Yeah.
David Porter, who would work with a lot of guys at Stax like Isaac Hayes and others. He played in the marching band as a drummer. So the drum, the rhythm, the beat, the cadence,
mm-hmm.
boom, 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 that's there. Whereas the Isley brothers are coming out of a different milieu in a sense, very heavily. Well, Maurice was influenced by the church, as many R&B singers in those days were coming out of the church, and the Isley brothers as well. There are originally 5 of them, I believe. There was O'Kelly, who became like the manager of the group. Then you have Rudolph, who's kind of like I almost called him the enforcer. No, he had a certain presence, a certain persona that, at least from the album covers, looked like the cat that's keeping things in check.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had Ernie. Ernie was real young at the time, so he didn't jump on the scene until the 60s. I think it was It's Your Thing, in 69, right? And when they do the battle thing, in this Versus thing coming up, it'll be interesting to see like where they start.
Mm-hmm.
Are the Isley brothers going to put Shout in there, just to show their longevity? Because that was a huge hit.
They have to.
That's church.
That song is eternal.
It's going to be at weddings and big events and stuff like that, right?
Unless people play that the cover done by the white guy. I don't know what the white guy's name was.
Oh man,
there's a few different like covers of it too, but
okay.
But the Isley brothers is the
yeah, and so the Isley brothers now they're coming out of Cincinnati. They're going to New York. As teenagers. I mean, teenagers in New York. Skyscrapers and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And now Vernon was supposed to go with them, but he was unfortunate. I think he was killed in a bicycle accident. So Vernon was part of the original Isley brothers. So it's the 3 of them, O'Kelly, Rudolph, and Mr. Biggs.
Ronald.
Thank you. Ronald.
The lead.
Yeah. Now, if there's also a matchup between the singing styles of Maurice White or Philip Bailey, you know, because they kind of a tag team. I mean, you know, Maurice originally didn't want to be singing. He wanted to be kind of in the background, orchestrating and doing the stuff. But Ronald was always the kind of lead guy, the main guy.
Yeah.
The only one you have that has a presence, you know, particularly in the more well-known Isley Brothers songs in the, you know, from the late 60s, really into the early 70s, is Ernie with the guitar. I don't know that there's anything that's really comparable. I mean, Earth, Wind and Fire had some great guitarists, from Roland Bautista, who I think was first. Then you had Johnny Graham and Al McKay doing the rhythm guitar. And of course, Verdine on the bass, that iconic bass. And the producer for the classic 70s Earth, Wind and Fire was Charles Stepney. And Charles Stepney is somebody that a lot of people really, you know, have slept on. They don't really know about Charles Stepney or what he did with Minnie Riperton and Rotary Connection, you know, again, coming out of Chess Records, because Maurice was a session musician for Chess Records, you know, Marshall Chess and all these guys that set that up in Chicago. All the blues guys played in there. I mean, Muddy Waters and, you know, you name it. I mean, whoever was coming through Chicago, they were at Chess Records.
Yeah.
Then you also have people like Fontella Bass, a song called Rescue Me. I Want It.
That was Charles Stepney too?
That was, I don't know that was Charles Stepney, but I know it was definitely Maurice White on the drums.
Oh, wow.
In that song, right? Billy Stewart was another popular singer, kind of heavy set guy. And he said, sitting in the park, you know, sitting in the park, waiting.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's Maurice White also on the drum. Okay.
That's incredible.
So he's playing with all of these guys. And some of the Motown cats are moonlighting in the 60s, unbeknownst to Berry Gordy, you know, because they're trying to get some extra gigs going. And they would come from Detroit into Chicago and play on some of the sessions back then.
Wow.
Then you have the influences of Black consciousness, African consciousness, and so forth taking place in Chicago. You know, a lot of experimental jazz groups and things, the Art Ensemble of Chicago, among, you know, others. And they had an influence on Maurice, too, you know, helped him to learn about playing the kalimba. And Ramsey also, you know, had an influence in Maurice, because Maurice was the drummer following the original Ramsey Lewis trio. After Red Holt Unlimited, trying to remember the name of the guys in that group. But Red Holt Unlimited was an offshoot. They had a big hit back in the 60s.
Oh, yeah.
Down. Yeah, I mean, that was the jam. You know, I'm talking about like 66, 67, you know, around that period of time. So when they left Ramsey Lewis, Maurice stepped in and he filled the drum chair. But some of the stuff they were doing, that's when he got connected up also with Charles Stepney, was also producing some of Ramsey's stuff. See, the thing about Charles Stepney is that he brings this symphonic orchestral quality. You know, it's very spatial.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of his works, the orchestration, you know, it's very, you know, that's where the classical influence comes from in a lot of Earth, Wind and Fire. He was sort of, some people kind of call him like the George Martin.
Of Earth, Wind and Fire.
Yeah, for Earth, Wind and Fire.
Yeah.
You know, because when George Martin was working with the BBC, you know, in England, he's bringing his knowledge and arranging, orchestration and classical stuff to the Beatles. And that took their stuff.
They did the cover of Shout, by the way. That's what I was thinking of, the Beatles. I said the white guy. Yeah, the Beatles, they did a cover of Shout.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
I know they did Twist and Shout.
They did that too. Yeah.
Okay. And that's another thing, the twist. I'm digressing a little bit, but the twist, you know, you think about people like Hank Ballard, Hank Ballard and the Midnighters. They're the ones that brought the twist, but it didn't take off with them. It took off with a guy who became known as Chubby Checker from Philadelphia. and then there's all kinds of variations of the twist. But I was listening to a song the other day off of one of my favorite albums from James Brown, 1974. It's called Reality. And on that album is a song called The Twist. And And when you first hear it, it's like, come on, baby, do the twist. And it goes like this, you know, and you're like, oh, yeah, it's, yeah, cool. But when it keeps going, as it goes, it locks into this groove. And it just, I don't know, it just was, I love that. I love that album. I used to play that album all the time when I was at RISD, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, we can talk about James Brown and his 70s work at some other point.
Yeah, as far as like the Isley Brothers are concerned, even thinking about them in comparison to Earth, Wind & Fire, and you even talk about Maurice being a session drummer, and even prior to his creating Earth, Wind & Fire, you know, the Isleys had already been gone for a decade or so at that point. So like even thinking about this upcoming challenge, so to speak, like my initial thought, thinking about my experience with both of their catalogs, like I know the Isleys is robust and there's a lot of hits and classics in there. My initial reaction is like, well, Earth, Wind & Fire is going to win this. The catalog is just too deep whenever it goes to the amount of songs that have changed. I'll just speak for myself, that have changed my life. And then that goes back to songs that came a couple years before I was born, like Let's Groove and things of that nature. Or going, you know, to the decade before I was born with Boogie Wonderland and classic songs, you know, That's the Way of the World, all these hits and this music that I grew up on. And I also grew up through you and through Mom and, you know, the radio, et cetera, like the Isley Brothers and stuff too. But it feels as though Earth, Wind & Fire also kept it going a bit more through the 80s and through the 90s than the Isley Brothers did. And then the Isley Brothers had that resurgence when R. Kelly ended up connecting and writing some songs for Ronald Isley, and that gave them a bit more of a resurgence. But I mean, overall, like my thought was like Earth, Wind & Fire is going to be the one that ends up winning, but it's a win-win for both groups because the whole world is going to be exposed to so much of their catalogs.
That's true. Like I said before, if they start where they started, you know, hit-wise in 1959, and then they went to Motown for a minute, right? And that didn't last too long. You know, they really needed to find their own sound. They were doing the Holland Dozier Holland thing there. You know, it was not until they created their own record label, T-Neck Records. We're living out in Teaneck, New Jersey, where I think that may have been where Jimi Hendrix, you know, was staying over with them for a while.
Yeah, Teaneck also was distributing some of the first recordings of Jimmy.
Yeah. So that's when they really started, you know, taking off, you know, and It's Your Thing was like a huge breakthrough.
1969,
you know? Yeah. I remember when it came out. I remember very well that, I mean, people were playing that song in school, in the schoolyard, in the street. It was just great. It was unbelievable. That was like, yes, you know, and it just hit so hard, you know?
Yeah.
Beautiful. And then they got into, you know, their own thing even further, you know, in the early 70s. I want to say that the classic Isley Brothers albums, now they may not be everybody's taste. But the thing I liked about the Isleys from the 3+3 album.
That was their first platinum album.
Okay. And then Live It Up with songs like Brown Eyed Girl, Hello, It's Me. They're taking pop songs, you know, songwriters' music, you know, sort of folk pop type music, and they're giving it that gospel feel. And he's, you know, Ronald is putting his stamp on all music that you might consider. I mean, Seals and Crofts, you know, great songwriters and everything, but they bring a different kind of feel to it. What the Isley Brothers do is then they take it to another level.
Is it because they're able to do it themselves too? Like, produce and write the things themselves?
Yeah, they're doing all of that stuff initially themselves, and they were a self-contained unit. But the thing is that then now this is where it probably gets a little controversial. They were doing a lot of the songwriting, their own songwriting stuff. And by this time, they also have Chris Jasper from Isley Jasper Isley. That's during the time that they started falling off a bit. They weren't getting that shine.
So they kind of split up and created a separate group.
It's sort of like Belle Biv DeVoe. Like they never like left per se, but then they did break off and do their own thing. I think eventually they came back again.
Is that before or after Between the Sheets?
Well, this was after Between the Sheets.
Which was in 83.
But it was not really until, in my opinion, until Mission to Please came out that they really took off again. And that's where the Mr. Biggs persona came on.
And that's not until 1996. Because I remember when that album came out. And that's crazy too. Like, here you are at 13 remembering when It's Your Thing comes out. And here I am at 11 remembering when Mr. Biggs and Mission to Please comes out.
Yeah.
And it's you know, it's very interesting. And then, you know, with the R. Kelly song with Contagious, I'm 16 at that point. So here we both are teenagers appreciating music from the Isley Brothers.
From the Isley Brothers.
In our moments and not listening to anything in the past. It's like in the moment, relevant to our times.
Yeah.
Both of us as teenagers have had the Isley Brothers be influential musically in some way.
And that's almost 30 years difference.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's incredible.
You know,
and I feel like I can say something similar. So this is where the Isleys do have one up on Earth, Wind & Fire when it comes to that relevancy in more recent times, even though 96 is now 25 years ago. But like Earth, Wind & Fire didn't have that top 25 radio hit in 1996, 97, 98, 2001, 5, 10, 15, none of that. Like, so it feels like when it comes to a bit more of like relevancy for folks who might be teenagers or in their 20s and stuff now, that the Isley Brothers might be a little more, and also because thinking about how many people have sampled, you know, a song like Between the Sheets. It's been sampled almost 200 times, just according to whosampled.com.
Yeah.
And, you know, when that one song alone has influenced generations upon generations, and there's a bigger influence than, let's say, Earth, Wind & Fire September, which we hear every September. We hear in all these commercials, we hear everywhere. But Between the Sheets, you also hear it's a really interesting matchup that they have going against one another.
Yeah. But you also said something about, you know, its relevancy. And I'm thinking Earth, Wind & Fire, you know, they tried to connect up with the boys. And
on the Heritage album.
The Heritage album.
That was 1990. And they also had MC Hammer on that album too.
That's what I'm saying. Hammer. Well, MC Hammer. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like, and Sly Stone.
Yep. You
know, so and I appreciated the effort and everything. And of course I like the interludes and all that stuff, which goes back, I think, to Charles Stepney again, you know, and the classical influence from what Maurice wrote to me about. In terms of the interludes. But then you have the Isley Brothers connecting up, like when Ronald Isley did Mr. I think it was around 2010 or 11.
Was it an album or a song?
It's an album.
Oh, wow.
It's an album. And on there is T.I.
Yeah.
Okay? And he's doing Put Your Money on Me is the name of the song, which I thought was a great song. And then T.I. was supposed to be on the video. The video was supposed to be made for that. But somehow it didn't work out. I don't know if it's because T.I. had some issues or whether it had to do with the tax stuff that Ronald Isley had been going through or what have you. You know, I don't know.
But it makes me think about, you know, what other song, like, will Jasper Isley's songs be included in the verses? Will Ronald Isley's solo material be included in the verses? Will Maurice or Philip's solo material be included in the verses?
Oh, man.
Like, what? So here, I've just found that the Ronald Isley featuring T.I. Put Your Money on Me. So here, let me play that real quick and then we'll get back.
I love this song.
That was really good. I haven't heard that before.
Is that right?
That was surprised. Like I was, like surprised at how good that song was. Like no shade to Ronald Isley or T.I. or anything, but that song was much better than I had expected. That was good. Yeah. So I mean, like if a song like that is included in the verses, then Earth, Wind & Fire is up for some trouble. Like,
well, you know, now in a contemporary sense, then maybe a couple of years after that, I think that Earth, Wind & Fire came out with their recording. It was the last one that Maurice put his stamp of approval on. And that was the...
Avatar?
No. The one that they came out with 2014.
Illumination?
No. That was in like 2005 or so. 2000.
Now, Then, and Forever.
Yeah, Now, Then, and Forever. Thank you. Yeah, that one has a sign on. Dun, 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 which I think speaks to now in a way. Sign on for things that are right. To make what's right our way of life. Sign on. So I think that spirit is not necessarily something you're going to hear on a Isley Brothers, more recent song. A lot of their thing had to do with sort of romance and, whereas when you start to Fight the Power, it's like, okay, Fight the Power, got that, 1975 or so, right? And then you have 1976, Harvest for the World, which is that and At Your Best, I think, are my favorite songs. There's a lot of great songs on there, but that and At Your Best, my favorites on the Isley Brothers. But after that, you start not hearing as much of those kinds of social consciousness songs coming into the eyes, mostly, Between the Sheets and, romance and relationships kind of thing. Yeah. Whereas Earth, Wind and Fire, yes, you had songs that kind of deal with social consciousness. You could say Saturday Night in a way is an example of that from the Spirit album. What you're going to do when the night is through and the crowd is gone and your dream is too. Yeah. Yeah. So just partying and having fun and all that stuff. But, wait a minute. And at the same time, you have Gamble and Huff with their motto, understand while you dance. In fact, Gamble and Huff really had a lot of social conscious music coming out of Philadelphia. That's why. Oh, man, that's a whole other conversation, Gamble and Huff, man. Everybody. And that meant that they had an album that I still have. It's called Let's Clean Up the Ghetto. I think that was the name of the album. And so it had different kind of songs, had everybody practically on the roster, from Lou Rawls and the Teddy Pendergrass and, the Blue Notes and, Yeah,
I do remember that album too, because I remember you telling me about it and I'm playing it and everything. Yeah. The International All-Stars.
Exactly. You hear some of that aspect in Earth, Wind and Fire, except they mostly, I think, because of Maurice, was like more spiritual kind of things. The album covers spoke volumes, in terms of ancient to the future, kind of Afrofuturism. It's about higher consciousness. The album covers say that also, like in the Powerlight album, where you have the figure standing sort of like Leonardo da Vinci's drawing, Vitruvius Man, where you have the chakras,
chakras going up. Yeah.
And which also connects up with the, serpentine fire, right? With the Kundalini concept. So it was more in that vein that they would speak to how you can, uplift yourself, not so much the world, I'm against this, I'm against war, I'm against, that sort of thing. Whereas, again, I'm sort of dipping back into Gamble and Huff, but I'm thinking of the Man of War by the Jacksons. And, that kind of consciousness, you think you can go to other people's, invade other people's lands and things and take over, that sort of thing. That's more explicit. That's taking a position that's not about, I can be a better person. I can rise up and take care of, if I can improve self, that self-aid, then I'll do what I have to do. But they don't tell you what you should be doing, but shining a light on it, on the issues. That's what you hear coming out of a song like Man of War. And I remember talking with Marlon Jackson about that. And he said that that was one of their most important songs. And I think you just don't hear it. It doesn't get a lot of play. Yeah. So anyway.
Wow. Yeah, that's powerful. Thinking about the impact of, moving forward of something like this Versus could do for both the Isleys and, Earth, Wind and Fire. Like, I didn't even recall, it had felt that Maurice had passed away more than just 5 years ago. And I don't know if that's also because of his diagnosis and kind of how he felt a lot more behind the scenes as Earth, Wind & Fire kept producing albums into the 2000s and, you know, through the 21st century and all. So then thinking about, you know, Ronald Isley, I mean, he's got to be, like, was he 80?
He'll be 80 this year.
Yeah. So it's like...
And Maurice would be 80 this year.
Wow.
They both born in 1941.
Yeah. So like the legacies of these groups, I mean, it seems, you know, for the Isley's sake that it will always live on through sampling, whether it's Between the Sheets or, you know, any of the other songs in their catalog. It doesn't, like, Earth, Wind & Fire gets sampled heavily too, maybe not so much as frequently as a song like Between the Sheets, but, you know, just thinking about, you know, the opportunity of kind of carrying these groups forward. I mean, I don't want to throw a label saying it's, you know, that they're going to be like a new classical music down the line, you know, 15, 20, 30, 40 years from now. But to say that they you know, will not or won't or do not have influence on the music that's yet to come is short-sighted. So I'm just thinking about, I don't know, like, where do you see, you know, something like this Versus being beneficial to groups like the Isley Brothers and Earth, Wind & Fire and others who people might not know as much about outside of 4, 5, maybe 10, you know, hit songs that each of the groups have done?
I think that situations like this and you know, DJ Cassidy, you know, bringing attention to classic R&B and so forth, as well as rap to some extent, is it's good for the culture in general. You know, it's good for America. It's good for the world to be reminded of quality, a certain standard, and also the information that the music carries sonically, but also lyrically. It also creates a bridge, a connection to today. Yeah. So that people who maybe never heard of them, or maybe you heard 1 or 2 songs, that they can see where, maybe not explicitly, but sort of subconsciously, they can begin to see the connections between what they enjoy today and say, wait a minute, oh, well, actually they were doing it then. Oh, well, that's where that groove comes from. Oh, you know, I didn't think about that. You know, it's interesting to hear how Taylor Swift will do her version of September. Yeah. In a completely different way. And at first, you know, you're saying like, dun, 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 yeah, anthem, you know, on the floor and everything, you know, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not how it goes, you know. But then when you step back and you listen to it for what it is, that there's sincerity in it, I think, and there's a nod, and people should be free to bring what they bring to it. Yeah, you know what I mean? It's another link. It's another connection. Now, if you want to go back and you want to hear the original, yeah, by all means. I mean, hands down, it's classic. The groove, Al McKay, and all those guys who put this stuff together, you know, just riffing and practicing. Hey, man, what's that groove you're doing? You know? Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, then go for it. That's what I say. So I don't have any problem with it now. But at first, I was like, come on, what? Right. But it's all good. It's all good. Nice. Yeah. So anyway, to answer your question, I think that the younger generation will hear more and then think about how they can take that somewhere. But I think it's also important, Papo, that people acknowledge the antecedents, the ones who came before, that they know what the connections are. Like we were talking before about the Beatles, you know, jumping out and doing, you know, like you say, Shout, or, you know, Twist and Shout, and the Rolling Stones, you know, they get their name from Muddy Waters, you know, song. I mean, all these guys, the Yardbirds, all the British groups, they weren't shy about saying Chuck Berry, yeah, Little Richard, yeah, Big Bill Broonzy, yeah, Muddy Waters, you know, that kind of thing. And I think that that's important, that people understand the roots and acknowledge, you know, the people who created the music. Now, everybody brings their thing to it. And that's a beautiful thing. That's what, a country is made of a fabric of different things globally, when Jay-Z started using those samples of Indian music. Okay, so he can do that because he's not, East Indian, or you can't have somebody playing the djembe, in music because you're not from Africa, or, like who has a right to this music? That gets into the whole territorial
appropriation and yeah.
Now, because we live in a capitalist society, the idea of monetizing this and that and the other, that gets into the whole sampling debate, or that situation with, with Justin and Pharrell with Marvin Gaye's estate.
Oh, that wasn't Justin. It was Robin.
Oh, not
Thicke
Justin.
Pharrell. Yeah, Robin Thicke.
Robin Thicke. Sorry about that. Yeah. Robin Thicke. Yeah.
Where it's like, they emulate. Oh, I shouldn't say they. Specifically, Pharrell emulated the feel of a song so much that they said you can't do. I mean, it's wild.
Also, but it was also the cadence,
But how many songs have that cadence?
Well, that gets into a whole
right. Yeah.
Can you copyright a beat, a rhythm, right? A melody.
Or can you copyright a feeling? It was ultimately what the court case ended up being around. Because musically, the notes are different. It's in a different key. Like there's the thing that aligns between Marvin and what Pharrell did was that the feeling is identical. It's pretty much identical.
Yeah, in terms of how they approach the context of the
energy
rhythm
of the song, the rhythm, the emotion of the song, the purpose of the song.
Right. But I have to I come back to the rhythm because that's like the motor that drives the song. Okay. And it's nuanced by the attack and, how the vocalist, comes in or where they, and that sort of thing. But that's where the two kind of align like real close, man. It's like,
and that makes me think about the Isley brothers. You're talking about Caravan of Love.
The Isley Jasper Isley.
The Isley Jasper Isley song Caravan of Love, and how that has an alignment, or it gives you the feeling with the was it Gregory Isaacs song?
No. Greg, that's you're thinking of the reggae guy. Gregory Abbott.
Shake You Down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on
right. Those two songs, the feeling of both of those are, you can sing one right with the other, but is it the same song? Did one sample the other? Like, no, like they didn't. So like the Isley brothers have had their own, I mean, it didn't obviously get to a court case and become a public thing like Pharrell, with Marvin Gaye, but Gregory Isaacs with the Isley brothers, I keep saying Gregory Abbott with the Isley brothers. I would say that's a comparable comparison to Pharrell and Marvin Gaye.
Yeah. I think there would be a case there too if it was. Now see what we started.
Now Gregory Abbott's gonna be like, nah, shut up.
Actually, I think it would be Isley Jasper Isley.
True.
I want to get paid here. What's going on? He said, "Wait a minute, that was 36 years ago, or 35 years ago." I said, "Nah, man, I want to get paid. Come on."
Yep.
But they say that imitation is the highest form of flattery. In one context, I think that's true. I mean, wow, I'm inspired by what Picasso painted or his style. So you're going to say, oh, I can't paint in a cubistic style because Picasso and Braque invented that, or Picasso or Cezanne. Can you imagine Cezanne saying to Picasso, nah, you can't do that. I want to get paid because you're using, my sense of volume and spatial depth, in your work, which led up to Cubism. Or somebody from Gabon among the Fang ethnic group, looking at a painting by Picasso and saying, wait a minute, that's one of those art masks that you have in there.
Right.
That's part of our cultural heritage.
Yeah. So how far does, how wide does it expand, or how deep does that rabbit hole go?
Yeah. You know, but we know that people have always been influenced, you know, by others, inspired by others. And in fact, Maurice White is often talked about that the most important thing is to inspire.
Right.
To inspire, whether it's being better people or musically, creatively, all of those sorts of things, you know? And so where do you make that line? I mean, I loved what Keith and Hank Shockley and the Bomb Squad were doing, you know, with Terminator X and all those guys, you know, when they were mashing up all those different songs. And then you had some of the rock groups, I think it was the Turtles and some others, you know, said, wait a minute. That little snippet right there. What you mean that microsecond? Yeah, right there. You know?
that was us, and we need to get Yep.
And so then, you know, then groups started paying them in advance, right? You know, clearance, right?
And now we have programs and platforms like TrackLib where it just gives you, like, you have the opportunity to search just catalogs of songs in existence. And if you want to sample any pieces of that, it will allow you to credit the original artist and allow that original artist to either get a certain percentage or however you end up dictating the terms, but or how should I say they end up dictating the terms. But, you know, you end up being able to then sample and use music that previously would have led to court dates and lawsuits and things of that nature. So,
you know, it'd be interesting when we talk about Michael Jackson owning the ATV catalog.
He used to, because
I know. Yeah, that's a whole.
And you just heard what happened. You know, it just was going on within the last year. ATV and Sony Publishing is buying up everyone. Like, between them and Hypnosis, they're buying up everybody's rights to their songs. Paul Simon just sold his to Sony. And that was never supposed to leave the Jackson family trust.
That was the legacy.
That was his legacy and they sold that off back to Sony a few years ago
for nothing,
for less than $1 billion.
Yeah.
It was 750 million or something like that.
So how important is legacy versus this? Okay, we got that. What does that translate into? How can you leverage this into legacy? I mean, or are you doing other things? Are you saying, well, we're going to take that $1 billion and we're going to put that into community development, investment in job manufacturing or training or voting rights? You know what I mean? That's a whole other conversation. But I want to get back to. So I was thinking, wouldn't that be something if one of these billionaire rappers, you know, they bought up some classical music? You know, catalogs, right?
Isn't most of that in the public domain now?
Well, that I don't know. It depends on what recording.
True. Yeah.
Might have been, which is an interesting point, because if you're listening to, let's say, the Turtles, they're saying, wait a minute, we do Happy Together or something like that, and we heard they sampled that, but the oboe part in the song came from a classical music piece. Is that in the public domain, or do they owe something to the
right
recording that they came from, which is now owned by a rapper? So now we get the money back.
Right.
You know, I mean, I don't know, but you brought up a good point about public domain. So is there a shelf life to the Michael Jackson songs after a certain period of time? At what point do they become public domain? And to what extent does this deal with certain laws, you know, copyright laws? What influences copyright laws? Who are the legislators who come up and influence or change the copyright laws?
Yeah.
How many of those people who write that legislation are supported by certain corporations that have an interest in them not changing the laws or tilting the laws to their favor?
Yeah.
It's like when Michael Jackson, you know, was going through that lawsuit situation. I mean, being accused, Chalmers, the second time. Apparently, from what I understand, some laws were changed that meant that if he lost the case, then he would have to forfeit over
the catalog. And
Yeah.
That was always, and that's why he always felt like that was the end game for any of his opposition, so to speak, was that they wanted his catalog and they wanted the rights to his music. I'm curious to see to know if he owned any of the Isley's music or Earth, Wind & Fire's music or anything like that.
No, he owned Little Richard's music.
Yeah, and considering that music was the Sony ATV catalog is so expansive,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's quite.
They had country. He had country music in there.
He had everything. He had
in addition to the Beatles.
Like Eminem, Alicia Keys, Pink. Just the list goes on and on and on, from current artists to artists decades in the past. It's that catalog is extensive. So
people got upset when Berry Gordy sold Motown. So it's going to be interesting to see the Isleys and Earth, Wind and Fire, go at it. And again, as I said, I think it's really good for the culture, for the country, for the globe, to see two top shelf, legacy artists going toe to toe with love.
Yeah, yeah. Hosted by Steve Harvey.
Oh, Steve Harvey?
Yeah, he's going to be hosting it.
And then you saw how he brought out the Earth, Wind and Fire when they got the awards.
Oh wow!
Did you see that?
No, I didn't. No, but that's cool.
Achievement Awards. I think it was the NAACP Lifetime Achievement Award.
Oh wow!
And I think it might have been at the Apollo. I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. No, maybe not, because it's California. I think it was California. But he brought them out, and he brought them out right. He brought them out. Yeah. He would even be singing some of the songs.
Mm-hmm. So it'll be interesting.
But Ronald's not going anywhere without Ernie.
Right.
So, he's definitely going to be there. Marvin's dead. Rudolph is, retired. He is a minister now. He's a minister. So he's not, I think he performed once with Ronald, like maybe 10 years or maybe close to 15 years ago on stage. Mm-hmm. They did Shout, together. It was great to see them going, woo, yeah. Woo, and of course, the Earth, Wind and Fire is still active.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the three of them.
Ralph, Verdine, and Philip.
Yeah. So I could easily see the five of them trading off, spaced, Steve Harvey somewhere. But they'll probably do the screen thing.
Virtual, yeah.
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how they do that.
Very much so.
Yeah. And that's Sunday, right?
Yep. Easter Sunday.
Anyway, thanks for this chat. I know we could have gone more in depth in probably a lot of other areas as well, but
we've got plenty more conversations to be had, and we could always dive back into Earth, Wind, Fire and the Isley Brothers at any time too. So
one thing I wanted to add, I meant to mention this before. You talked about Philip Bailey and how he has gone off, and had solo. He has his own solo career. Mm-hmm. Going on. That's another area where the Isley Brothers, there's only one album I can think of where Ron Isley, came out and did something completely separate from Isley Brothers.
Yeah.
And that was the one called Isley Meets Bacharach.
So Burt Bacharach.
Songs like Alfie and Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head and Make It Easy on Yourself. And it's got some great songs on this. I remember I played this in the car one time. You probably remember when we were going up to Canada.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That was a long time ago. Yep.
Yeah. He said he always wanted to. He met Burt Bacharach like early on, like in the early 60s or maybe late. They were doing some studio work. It might have been around the Shout period of time or so. But they went and they just in passing. But later on, he said, I always wanted to sing Bacharach songs. So the ballads that Ron Isley sings and the way he delivers them, it's true that Maurice White, had one solo album.
Stand By Me.
Yeah, with the Stand By Me song on it.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I thought that was the name of the album.
I remember that Maurice song. White. Yeah. And had that's right, because that was also a video, and it was like the breakout song from that album. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of really good songs on that recording as well. And he also had the interludes, in there, which I thought was good. But anyway, that's what I wanted to say, is just the fact that that these artists can also continue to grow in their own way. Mm-hmm. Because they bring something back fresh, from their own personal growth, and they have something new to contribute, to the music.
Yeah.
Oh, one thing I also wanted to say was that where I talked about Charles Stepney,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I was going to say before that this might be a little controversial for some people in terms of how they value the Isley Brothers and the Isley Brothers sound. But it really, Malcolm Cecil and Robert Margouleff, the guys who produced the Isley Brothers on that recording, the 3+3 and up through Harvest for the World, they, I don't think, get enough credit for contributing to the sound of the Isley Brothers, because they also contributed to the sound of Stevie Wonder, because they also co-produced or, you know, arranged some of that music. When he's doing Just Enough for the City, you know?
Yeah, and it sounds like a movie too.
Right. That whole the sonic thing, right? Skyscrapers and everything, you know, and you know, Stevie was like, you know, is that and down, and so at a certain point, after he's gone through all this stuff in the city and in jail and all this stuff, then Stevie was going to sing it again, you know, he's and he said, no, Stevie, no, because I think it was Malcolm Cecil felt that there needed to be some more, and this guy's going through all this stuff.
Yeah.
He said that. He said he made Stevie Wonder sing it again. No, Stevie, no. Again. He said finally he got to the point where Stevie was so pissed off.
Yeah.
He says, it's you know, he's like, yeah, that's it. You know, and he got it. And I remember, I think Quincy Jones used to do that kind of technique too, you know, to get Michael to dig in a little more, you know, do that. No, again. Yeah, no, that's great. Great take. Okay, but can you do it just one more time? You know, just, you know, and that's the thing about producers is that they're also, the best of them are also good psychologists. You know, they know how to work with the artist, but they know when to push them, when to give them space, just to, you know, do their thing. And that's a skill. That's
very much so. Awesome. Thanks, Dad.
Welcome. Thank you, Pop.